and I think you can easily convince us. What's that noise?
Is Matt
Oh,
DJing?
no,
Was that the cork?
I'm trying. My phone is on top of a coffee mug on top of my computer, and I'm sliding it to.
And you're sitting backwards on a toilet.
Yes.
I'm getting sweat.
Let's get to our first topic here, guys. I am really interested to dive into this because we almost touched on it when we were talking about Brady and Jordan and Kobe and LeBron. The second best player ever. That's never debated, is it, in sports?
Every day there's another who's the best. There's a bracket. There's this. There's voting, and I vote. If I'm on Facebook or Twitter, I vote on anything that comes up.
Yeah,
Because
I'm a sucker for poll.
I'm a sucker for polls. I want to click on it and I want to see the percentage bar on where
I want to see how right I am.
and it's depending on who sends it out. A lot of times it defaults to whatever the most recent thing was, but it's always the best player. And I'm thinking they had a list of the top 5 NBA players and the percentage of the votes. I said, all right, everyone's gonna pick Jordan. It was by far the winner. But who's second best, right? And then I thought, if just personally your favorite player, it's always easy to pick. Oh, my favorite player is Allen Iverson. Who's your second favorite? That would be harder, I think, for me.
Yeah.
So in all those polls, I kept thinking, all right, these are interesting. When you always get to the top 5, the top 3 of anything, right? TV shows, actors, whoever. We never have the argument who's the second best, who you think's the second best. Because you always have a clear cut personal favorite, or you really think someone's a favorite. But it's an interesting. So now I'm thinking about these weird sucker for the polls. I'm thinking about changing the percentages. I'm gonna go vote for. I'm gonna start voting for the third choice. Throw it off.
Right, skew the numbers.
Just shift them in my favor.
Well, all right. Well, so then let's just start. Who do you think is the second best quarterback of all time?
Tom Brady.
And who would you say is number 1?
Montana.
I agree 100%.
So we were having this discussion during that Super Bowl against the Falcons, John. You were here, and we were actually discussing that together during that game. And we're like, is this the game that catapults him over? Is it not? And I think we ended the night still saying yeah, Brady's fantastic and he's amazing, but I can't get over the Montana mountain.
Right. And I mean, I didn't watch a lot of Montana, but I watched a fair amount. Even when I go back and watch highlights, Joe Montana just looked like he'd never made a mistake. And as close to flawless as Brady is or was, he still lost twice to Eli Manning and a backup quarterback with a huge penis.
Montana may crack the top 3 for me. He's definitely not 1 or 2.
Who's 1 and 2?
Brady's number 1, and I actually don't think it's that close. He did lose 2, right? But he got
3.
there. 3. He got there. Played for 20 years. He's by far the best.
Right. The consistency is just unmatched.
Even the seasons that if they didn't make it, they were still 12-4, 13-3. They were really, every year they were good.
Every year you just assume they were going to almost win it all.
This has become a ritual now.
Hey, Enola.
Uncle Johnny and Chris and Matt. Yeah.
Say hi, boys. Hey, dude.
Hey.
I bet you she would say Brady.
Probably.
Say Brady or Montana?
Montana.
Oh, both. Okay.
Montana,
It's a tie.
She's neutral.
You say Brady? Oh, Ash says Brady.
Oh, out of the 4 of us, she knows the most. So let's go with Brady.
All right,
So-
Brady.
Let me play devil's advocate to you, McShay. So I think you can easily sell me on Brady. So I'm okay with that. But if you watch the Patriots week to week and you watch the incredible preparedness and their ability to one week be a power I team and the next week be a spread team and the next week get into a defensive battle, and do you watch all that and say that maybe hid the potentiality of him having off games? The way that they were so versatile, where Montana was like, hey, we're running this West Coast offense. It is what it is. I'm just going to be better.
I think if you put both of them in different situations, that'd be interesting to see where it goes. Like Montana, they would both still be good, but did they both find the perfect coach with the perfect set of interchangeable players, with the exception of a few, right? Like Montana Rice, Roger Craig. Like he had the same grouping of players for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I think I would make the argument backwards too. Like I think they both benefited and it hid some things for both of them, but I throw everything else away about who's the greatest quarterback, and I was just busting. Like it's one of those two. You got the ball on your own 5-yard line. You have a minute and a half to win the Super Bowl. Who do you give the ball to? Like, how do you make the call? Like, both of them.
Right. Yeah. You're not going to lose.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not on the mindset of the greatest comes down to who has the most championships.
Right.
It helps. It's part of the argument, right? But
there's a lot more that goes into that as far as the
lot,
team and the organization, and
especially football.
In football, I look at the big games. What mistakes, right, were played? How many other players just want to go there to play with that person? And with the exception of very few games, Super Bowls, I mean, like they were down in almost every one of them, but no one ever thought they were going to lose. And Montana too. They almost lost to the Bengals.
Did you hear that? That like Inside the NFL special. It was several years ago. You guys have probably seen it, but they're talking about the drive that brings them back against the Bengals. And they said Montana comes in the huddle and they're all like real nervous and they're tight. And he goes, "Did you guys see John Candy eating popcorn in the front row?" And like just, diffuses the whole thing. Whereas I think Brady's that guy that comes in really stoic and is like, "We're fucking doing it right now." So that's where it becomes another interesting question. So you got that one drive to do it. Which personality would have won it? Which, either way you can win.
I thought of that story because I would love to see John Candy, first of all. He's a great person to spot in the crowd, too.
Oh, my gosh. Instantly, you're in a better mood.
So
you
good.
See John Candy eating popcorn.
It's a better story if he wasn't even there. And Montana just said it to fuck with his guys.
On the interview, the Stern interview, he was asked talking about the Falcons game. And he's like, you're getting blown out in the first half and you have two choices. Fuck, this is over. Or this comeback is going to be amazing and one for the record books. He's like, that's what we thought. And that's what everyone on the team thought. That's what I thought. That's what we talked about. That's how we approached it. It was never we are down by 20, whatever. It was, this is going to be amazing. So they're both the same story. Like, even though they were losing, you're never going to ever count them out. And that's like the weird intangible thing that I say. If the three of you, or everyone says Montana's fine. I'm on board with that. I'm not going to argue that. But I would lean Brady because I want to go. But
I remember
that's the time. You got to have a tiebreaker.
I remember, Kev, when we left at halftime, we were at your dad's house watching the Super Bowl, and we left at halftime, and we were like, this means nothing. This game might as well be 0-0 because giving Tom Brady any time to make a comeback is too much. Right. Like with the Eagles, it was like, oh my God, there's 55 seconds left. That's a year for Brady to just walk down the field and throw it to Gronk 5 times and score a touchdown. And they did it, and they were probably like, and let's just bank on the Falcons having the absolute worst play calling in the history of the second half of the Super Bowl. And they got that.
Bad.
And Matty Ice going ice cold.
Let's forget that Julio Jones is on our team for 2 quarters.
Right.
What sport has the hardest to determine best player ever? Like has a group has more than just 2 or 3. Like I feel like basketball is 3 or 4 guys, like maybe 5. NFL is probably 2 or 3. I feel like
NFL's
baseball,
tricky. 'Cause
Baseball.
yeah,
It's
baseball.
baseball.
So
baseball
hard.
has like 10. Like you could.
It's baseball
there's-
because of the tools, right? Like you could have a guy that just hits bombs, but he doesn't steal bases. He's a DH. He doesn't even field. I mean, how are you going to convince me that's the greatest player that ever lived?
Yeah.
Don't you also
Where
think
it's-
their baseball's handicapped by the eras of the game more than
Totally.
anyone else? Because you could even say, like, if someone wants to make a Wilt Chamberlain argument, I'll listen to it because he could have played when he was 50, or his style could have played.
They changed rules
baseball.
because of him.
Yeah, like you weren't allowed to dunk.
Right.
And
in
have you
3
seen those
seconds.
analytics where they take a guy? This is just one that I've seen, but they did this thing on Pistol Pete Maravich, and they didn't have the 3-point line, right? But they basically could graphic show you how many of his shots would have been threes.
They didn't
Right?
have the
That's
3-point shot when he was playing.
And he still
No.
averaged 44
And he
points. in college.
44.2 points a game. I mean, think about that. And then they mapped out how many of those would have actually been threes. I think you can make that argument about him translating to today's game, right?
100%.
Totally.
And football, we're already doing it with Montana versus Brady, different eras, but we're having that discussion right now. Baseball, we don't know how much the manipulation of those laces even matters too, right? To the pitcher or the hitter.
the way they
year on
make the
year.
balls.
Yeah,
Like-
because they've had eras where they raise the laces and then you see homers go down and then they lower them and you see homers go up. And so how do you quantify that difference? And then the other part of it is generationally, like the strength of the guy, the size of the parks. Like basketball and football, the field hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Like
the
a
size
home
of 3-point.
run.
Yeah.
The right field wall isn't the same in any ballpark.
No.
No.
I
Or
wanna
from a previous
So
era.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like one of the old, like Ebbets Field, one of the old famous stadiums got ripped down. Like no one ever hit a home run because it was 490 feet to center field, and the left and right field were 400 feet, and that's just how it was. And would Babe Ruth have been able to play now? Like, was he? It's a weird argument. Like, you have to consider him one of the best because of all the stats, but do those stats translate over? Were those guys
I
throwing
think-
74 miles an hour, and they would pitch all game? There was no relievers.
Yeah. And then the next day they would pitch too.
And the next day, and he
Yeah.
would smoke 8 packs of cigarettes and have a case of beer.
on the mound. On the mound.
Like it was a different.
There was ashtrays in the dugout.
Think about
Actually,
the
probably was.
there
probably
were,
was.
yeah.
Yeah, there probably
Think
was.
about the disparity in speeds too. Like you just said,
Yeah.
they're throwing 74. Now a guy might throw 94 one pitch and 78 the next pitch. Talk about a mind fuck. Like
Mhm.
the processing speed of doing that. Whereas in Babe Ruth's day, they had like, okay, I got the spitter and I got the fastball. Like,
Yeah.
and they're 2 miles an hour different. They just move.
And
Just spit on one.
even
Right.
now,
So it just looks
It
different.
is-
even now, the best pitchers, the fastballs don't go straight. They're 98 miles an hour, but they move.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think it's
I-
baseball. I think we're all in agreement.
Baseball.
Yeah.
But I in my time, if I'm forced with a gun to my head to make a decision, there is no bigger freak of nature that I watched play baseball than Barry Bonds.
Bonds,
The
absolutely.
man was walked 4 times a game every game with bases loaded sometimes. He brought the game to a screeching halt every time he was at bat.
Yeah.
He led the league in walks, obviously, but he would have finished. I can't remember if it was first or second or third in hits if his walks counted as hits. Like he was walked more times than people hit.
Yeah. And
It-
I mean, he was a very athletic guy too. Early in his career, I mean, he was playing outfield. He was stealing bases like on an elite level, right?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
didn't hit the weight room. He just buffed up a little bit.
So
He
here's the
did-
question to trail back to the who's number 2 thing. If he would have been healthy, is Griffey on that level?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
I think Griffey was the most natural baseball player I ever watched. And that's why he got injured, because he didn't juice.
There's an interesting article.
Maybe he did, who knows.
.com right now that
shitty juice.
did you? I mean, we all collected baseball cards growing up. There are certain names of players that are burned into my head. I don't know anything about other than at one time their rookie card or their card was like the best. For me, the name I don't know if it was Todd Van Poppel.
Oh,
Pitched for the A's, and it was like the card to have. So ESPN has the best prospects ever for each MLB team. And it's not who had the best career, but who was the best prospect coming out. So like for the Mets, it was Greg Jeffries was talked about as the best prospect over better than Dwight Gooden, better than Dower Strawberry.
Third baseman?
But, yeah. But if Griffey was one, like he was, they brought it into tiers, and Griffey was in the top, I think it was the top 8 of all time, and Griffey was in there above A-Rod for the Mariners.
Who was the Phillies? Scott Rowland?
Didn't we sign Greg Jeffries?
No, it was Pat Burrell.
Pat the Bat. Pat the Day.
Pat Burrell.
Also drank
we were
100
way
days in the dugout.
low on the list. But there are some like Todd Van Poppel, of course, was on there, and then there were just other like I remember collecting their cards, and they just never panned out. But there's a pitcher for the Yankees who they said he was the best athlete, the best pitcher I've ever saw. He went to stop his brother getting hit in a bar fight and ripped his shoulder off his body. Could never repair it.
Right, like who was supposed to be like the next like JD Drew. Remember all the hype around him?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And some of them ended up having really good careers, but you look at how they were hyped up, and baseball's such a crapshoot.
Oh my gosh. So nuts. It's like if you're good and you can make even like a shitty career, as long as your name shows up in a video game, you got it made. The baseball union is unbelievable.
There's your Brady legacy question. There's your answer. Which one want to be on a video game? That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody else think Matt just wanted to name drop Todd Van Poppel for that story?
I'm telling you.
He's been sitting on that for a while.
When anyone says Todd Van Poppel, all they're looking for is just a name drop.
You guys know Todd Van Poppel.
Name to drop. You guys ever heard of
Todd VP? Yeah.
TVP, yeah. Highest card.
Played for the A's.
So who in the modern era could potentially change your mind about Bonds? You know,
Trout?
could Trout?
Oh, Trout, of course.
Yeah.
Trout's unbelievable. And I think
what about Pujols?
At the end of the day, we might call Trout.
See, that's that argument
like
for me, Chris, where I'm like, he didn't steal. He was a good fielder, but a first baseman, so I never had to see him show any range. Like, that's a tough sell for me.
Yeah.
What about, this is going to sound like I'm making a joke, but I'm really not. What about Ichiro?
I mean, if he played the years that he played in Japan in America, he'd be over Pete Rose's hit record, which no one will pass.
No, he had a cannon from right field. He was fast.
Always on base.
No, sound like a joke.
It's because he was halfway down the first baseline. He had laid the bat
right.
out.
Like, he was 7 steps in when he finally bunted it.
But yeah, we talked about like different eras and different equipment and all that stuff, but just there are more different kind of players in baseball than any other sport.
And actually, wait. What about we didn't even think. What about Todd Van Poppel?
Oh, good pull, deep pull.
Chris, was he an A's pitcher?
I think he was an A's. I used to have his baseball card. Yeah, he's an A's pitcher.
You had a Todd Van Poppel?
Yeah, I did.
Dude, a TVP is pretty valuable.
TVP is valuable.
Albert Pujols' career batting average. Does anyone want to take a guess?
327.
305.
311. Best band of all time.
Exactly 300.
Oh.
Good time to retire.
What's home runs? Like, is he ranked in the top anything?
656. I think he's like top 10 or 5.
Here's a question for you.
Definitely top 10.
Phillies all-time greats that are tied with Albert Pujols' career batting average.
Oh God, who got 300 and retired in the game? Kruk.
Yes,
John Kruk.
John Kruk.
Wow. Yeah, he batted over 300 that season.
300 career hitter.
Yeah.
Wow.
And didn't he retire in that game as soon as he knew?
Yeah, I want to say he was on the White Sox.
Yeah, he got a hit and then retired as a White
Yeah.
Sox, like on the field. He got the ball from the outfielder and retired. So cool.
See, this is why baseball is amazing.
It's a crock
We
move.
had
Please hang up and try again.